Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Shaman Talk with Tegan. Tarot with Tegan is where you'll find me on Instagram and Facebook, or if you want to email me, you can email me there at Gmail. Okay, so last video I put out, I asked people if there was something specific that they wanted me to cover or if they had any questions, and I did get someone request a video about how to recall your power or regain your power, whatever you want to call it. And I think that's a really good topic of discussion to do. So I've touched on it briefly in other videos about calling your power back. And so we're just going to do a separate video all about it. Okay, so first of all, basically the reason that I make these videos, that I do the work that I do and the things that I do is for this. This is like a good summarization of why I do the things I do and why others who do energy work and things like that do what they do. At least that's part of the reason. It's for the power recall. Now, when I hear that, I know that sometimes people attribute to calling back your power, people attribute it to people who see themselves as witches, or it's a feminist thing to call back your power or something like that. It's directed towards a specific group of people, and really that's just not true at all. Power recall, reclaiming your power, recalling it, is for every single person on this planet. So in the gist of recalling your power, reclaiming your power, the overall thing that I'm going to say here is that what that means is remembering your own divinity. That's it. That's the reason I make these videos. That's the reason I do the energy work that I do for others, for myself. Reading people's cards is to help people along the way, along this process of remembering who they are and where they came from. And I'm not saying it as like, oh, your ancestors are from Italy. Not that you can have to ignore that or can't celebrate that, but that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying from a higher perspective. Who are we? Where did we come from? Why are we here? We're here to remember who we truly all are at the core. We're all these aspects of the universe. We're the universe coming here, separating itself into individual entities or different selves to experience different things. And now for some people, that's gonna be like, ugh, whatever, that doesn't even mean anything, or it might just be like too much to think about, and I understand. So, if you're someone who does this kind of clicks or rings those bells in your mind, then it's something for you to really listen to. If you're someone who's like, that's overwhelming and insane, that's fine. These videos that I make are not necessarily for everyone. It's just for those people who are ready to open up their minds, open up their hearts, and just understand that there are more possibilities out there than we give ourselves credit for, or that we let ourselves understand. Okay, so reclaiming your power is just understanding that you're a divine being of love and light. And that's, to put it simply, that's it. And that we can all remember that. I don't know if it's going to catch on video, but it's interesting. I'm doing reclaiming power, and it's currently thunderstorming outside. Lots of physical power there. And it's also going to be a full moon in a couple days. So my setup's a little off. Everything's a little off today, but it's fine. We're reclaiming our power anyways. So what keeps us from reclaiming our power, reclaiming our star, galactic, whatever it is, ancestry, and understanding ourselves? There are so many things that, so in this video, I'm going to do like an overview of what it is without going too much into detail. So otherwise I'll sit here for like 5 hours. So number one, we oftentimes let society or individual people or ourselves, sometimes just ourselves, right? We put these dampers and these limits on everything. And we have to learn how to break out of these limitations. So it could be just that you were brought up in a way that was very, like, for lack of a better term, sexist, in that women in the family were meant to only get married, bear children, and do the housework. And if that's your life, I'm not saying it's wrong. But all I'm saying is that some of us were brought up in that way, where there were specific gender roles that you had to adhere to, right? Some of us were not, but some of us were the opposite direction. But anyway, some of us were, that's just an example. So maybe you're kind of stuck in that sentiment, even if you're actively trying to not be. Part of reclaiming your power in that sense is knowing that, hey, no one says you have to have children. No one says you have to get married. If you want to do those things, great. If you don't, then that's breaking out of that limited mindset of, oh, well, I was always told that this is how a woman behaves and this is how a man behaves. And the overall consensus, I feel like, at least in our society, is those things are not as prevalent anymore, thank goodness, but they're still out there. They're still kind of taught to people. It could be, I've given the example of, even if it's something seemingly positive, like if you're a really good athlete, say you're in high school, you're the top football star, but in your mind, you're like, I hate football. I hate playing football. I don't like it. But you feel that that's a limitation, even though people are praising you, like, oh, he's the next big thing, he's going all the way. That can have a negative effect on you. So your calling back your power is knowing that if you truly don't like playing football anymore, then stop doing it. You might have those outside sources saying, oh, what are you doing? You're throwing away your future, blah, blah, blah. But those are other people's issues and things. Those have nothing to do with you in your life. And that's, again, just an example, but that can be applied to almost anything in life. Sometimes it's outside people telling us, oh, you're this, you're not that. You have to do it this way. You can't do it that way. When really we all have to take a second, literally in seclusion, in quiet, no phone, no music, no nothing. Be like, what do I want from here, from my heart? What do I like? What don't I like? And sometimes it's a scary thing because you're like, I don't actually know. Like, I've been told for so long that I have to do this or that I'd be great at that I don't know who I am or who I want to be. So that's a heavy thing. That doesn't happen overnight. That could take an entire lifetime, and that's okay. But as long as we take those steps, that's reclaiming our power. So the hardest part, though, I think, is when you start to when it clicks that you have these limitations set from other people, you can hear it pretty easily. Like, oh, this person's trying to tell me this, but I don't want to. What's harder is when it's our own mind. Maybe we don't necessarily have those outside influences or pressures, but for whatever reason, a lot of times it stems from past lives and karmic contracts and things. But we have our own inner monologue always going like, oh, you're going to fail. Oh, you can't possibly do this. Oh, why did you do it this way? Why'd you say this and do that? We have to try and break those limitations, give ourselves grace, and reclaiming your powers, understanding that even though it's your own voice, it's still stemming from elsewhere. It's not coming from this lifetime, most likely. It might be, but there's always something else at play. So it's even, again, the first step is kind of understanding that and being able to take a step back and be objective in certain situations. Be like, why am I thinking this? Why do I think this way? Because then if you can kind of pinpoint, be like, there it is. Or if you can't, that's why you come to someone like me or someone else who has certain abilities who can help you understand where it's coming from. Or if you do know where it's coming from, what's the next step? To heal it. I think that's where we get lost too in society sometimes. It's like we're taking these steps. A lot of people are going to therapy and things, which is great. But then we get to the point where it's like, okay, here are my triggers. I'm triggered by this. And then people are like, oh, work is done. I understand my triggers. That's not it. You figure out what they are and then you heal them. You get better. And that can be hard. Again, that can be hard to do. That can take the rest of your life. You might have to come to someone like me in order to actually get rid of that energy. And that's fine. But part of recalling is also knowing that it's okay to ask for help sometimes. I feel like there's both ends of the spectrum on this. There's this end that I used to be at where it's like, I don't need help from anybody for anything ever. And that's just not possible. You can't go through life literally never getting help. And it's fine to get help. But then we also have the other end of the spectrum over here that I see kind of in general where it's like, this constant state of victimhood. People are always blaming other people, never blaming themselves. Not that you have to blame yourself, but we have to like understand that we play a part in everything that happens to us, okay? So some people are always a victim. People try and give them solutions, but they never want the solutions. And there's two reasons for that, or probably more. But the two reasons that I think of is, number one, some people kind of like being the victim. Maybe not literally physically being a victim, but like they get attention that way. That's where they like to stay. It's here because then people are always trying to help them, reach out for them, even though they don't accept the help, but that's where they like to stay. Now, some people may not necessarily, like being there, but they might be comfortable there. Maybe that's a better way to say that. Not that they like being the victim, but that they are comfortable in the victimhood because that's where they're used to. That's where they're used to being. And if they're not the victim anymore, if they start to realize like, oh, I play a part in everything, or there are solutions to most things, then where does that leave them? They don't know. And that's not a judgment. That's just saying that it's okay if you feel that way at first. Because if there's solutions, then there's no one else to blame, right? You have to take responsibility for some things. And some people don't want to recognize that. And again, that's not me trying to be mean. It's just what it is. And so we do have these people here that, well, if it's not someone else's fault, then it has to be my fault, and people are not ready. Some people are not ready to take responsibility for some things in their life. So they're always going to be here constantly needing help or asking for help, but then never really taking it, or they just take. If you're here, I suggest either start taking help for real or do the opposite. If you're someone who just cannot get yourself out of this rut of constantly being a victim and things are always just happening to you and, oh, woe is me, go to the other end and start helping others. Or start changing your mindset. Even just saying things in your mind at first will help you. So, what else keeps us from reclaiming our power? So, it's basically labels and these little voices in our own head. But, and this is a sensitive subject, as most of what I talk about is often, religion. It's not that you can't be religious. You can be whatever you want. You have free will. It's free universe. But obviously, a lot of organized religions have these very set of strict rules that if you don't follow, you're going to hell. Or in order to get into heaven, you have to have this immense guilt or something. I don't know. I honestly don't truly understand it from a personal perspective, but you can still be religious, but be open-minded and be reclaiming your power. Or you might step outside of your religion even for a few minutes and be like, oh, wait a minute, this was actually hindering me. A lot of organized religions are based off of fear and control and guilt. And that's not okay in the grand scheme of things. And again, I'm not saying that everyone who is more religious feels that way. You don't have to. And you don't have to stop believing in your religion, but it's just that we sometimes have to look at organized religion more objectively. Again, that objectiveness needing to come in and be like, okay, this is a certain belief in this system, but it makes absolutely no sense. So not doing that. You know what I mean? So it's stuff you have to figure out for yourself, but it's okay to be open. There's no reason to fear questioning things in your life, questioning your religion or certain aspects of it. You don't have fear about that. That's what the point is. If you don't ever question anything, then that's pointless being here, because it's like, that's the point. Being able to figure things out for yourself, what you think, what works for you, what you think is going on with the world. You don't have to adhere to super strict rules. And so actually on this note, some people ask, well, isn't shamanism a religion? And no, there is a label to it, but besides the pillar of what most religions are initially based off of is coming from a loving place and loving people and healing, shamanism is open to interpretation. They say that in the training, that's here are some guidelines and things, but then you make it what you need it to be. So besides this, the pillar of love and non-judgment and things like that, like, you don't have to specifically believe in anything. And really, from my perspective as a shaman, my beliefs have veered just slightly from, some of the shaman stuff that I was trained in, but it's all within the same realm, because I do have different things that I've studied and things like that. And it's like, oh, if I bring all of these things together, that's what makes what I think is happening here or what happens after here. It's not just these boom, 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 boom. Here are the rules. You have to stick to them. Otherwise, you're a terrible person. It's like, you don't need to constantly feel bad for being a human. That's my main thing. It's like, you're not sinning. You don't need to repent. You just need to learn and grow. It's fine. Okay. We'll move on from that. So yes, reclaiming your power is remembering who you are. You're a divine being. And okay, I lied. We're going back to the religion thing one more time. When it comes, if you're a divine being, and that's what Jesus was trying to say. That's all Jesus was trying to teach, to let people know, remind them, hey, you're an aspect of the universe or God or source or whatever you call it or don't call it. That's literally you. You're a part of that. So be your own person. Be the best version of you in your own way. And I know that might ruffle some feathers if there's people who listen to this and who are religious, but Jesus didn't come here to be like, oh, here's what I say, now follow exactly what I did and repent for your sins to me because I died for them. That's just not it. If you start to look at the story of Jesus from a higher perspective, from a different angle, all he was trying to do was come here and be like, hey, you can be your own person. You're part of the divine cloth. You are a being of light. So like act accordingly, that's it. That's the gist of it. He didn't come here to start Christianity. He didn't come here so that hordes of people would follow in his footsteps. It was more just he wanted people to like have it click. And that's what I'm trying to help you guys do. Anyone do. Same thing. I'm trying to just help people have that moment of clarity, even if it's not the big clarity, but just little things like, oh, you know what? I've thought this way for a long time and it's not working for me. So I'm gonna think differently, So that's all power recall is. Reclaiming your powers, reclaiming your own divinity and understanding that. We don't need to hold on to these extreme beliefs of who we are, who we aren't, who we're allowed to be, who we're not allowed to be. Oh, well, I'm, this religion or this ethnicity and I'm this and I'm that. And in the grand scheme of things, most of us have reincarnated before, like I said in my reincarnation video. And guess what? We've all been born in different countries, all been born in different ethnicities before. Now, that's not an excuse in this lifetime to, culturally appropriate, but it's understanding that, like, most of us have lived in different parts of the world and different aspects. And it's like, we're all just people. We're all just people. And that's why people say that, because it's like we're all just humans. We've all experienced at least a couple different lives at a couple different places, so we deep down have this understanding of everyone, of ourselves, but our ego gets in the way and stops us from being able to get out of these limiting mindsets. So if we destroy the ego, we can destroy the limiting beliefs, the religious beliefs that keep us down here, things like that. And I did make a separate video on ego itself. So if you're like, oh, I need to hear more about that, go back and watch it. So, detaching from the ego, remembering our own divinity, hard work. It's not easy. I'm not going to say that. Like I said in one of my other videos, blood, sweat, and tears went into my shamanic training and the shedding of my ego. And I'm not even fully done with that yet. I'm almost there. Not quite. I'll be real. So reconnecting to ourselves, reconnecting with nature, reconnecting just to the more natural aspect of ourselves. Doesn't mean you have to like stop showering or whatever, but it's like just getting out into nature and just no phone, maybe for safety purposes, wherever you are, bring a phone, but like we're not on our phone, we're not listening to music, we're just sitting. Just sit. If you can't just sit alone, even just for a few minutes, Like, people will joke, but I also think they're serious. Like, oh, I can't do that. I can hear the thoughts in my head. That's a problem. That's okay though. Again, I'm not saying that out of judgment, but that's a call to be like, oh wait, I have work to do and I should probably do it. Get closer to your own divinity. You can do it. Okay, the last thing I'm going to end on here is kind of going with that victimhood thing I was saying earlier, is we create our own reality. That's just it. And again, this is something that some people just cannot fathom. If something isn't happening to me, if someone else isn't taking the reins, then it's chaos. At least that's what some people think. And whether we think it's just people making us a victim, or again, if some people, it's like, not only do they believe in, let's call it God, just because that's more widely accepted, people blame God, or like, oh, well, God won't let me do this. No, 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 no. That's not how it works. People need to give themselves either more credit, more power, or they need to realize that, like, God or the universe doesn't control everything you do. You're here under free will. Now, the universe or God, whatever source is what we call it from my lineage, sure, it plays a part in things and keeping things running. We got certain, things that happen that are usually like, oh, whoa, what the heck? What a weird coincidence, There's always a grand scheme of things and things going on that we don't know about, yes. But when it comes to the smaller things, the decisions we make, that are things that happen to us in life, that's us. That's us. And that's it. And again, that makes people uncomfortable. So they're like, well, what? I'm responsible for most of the things that occur in my life. Again, maybe not all, because again, we have free will and some people really go to town on that. But the universe or God or whatever will respond to how you think. Your limited thinking is creating your reality. So there's a kind of like a quote that I'm going to try my best to remember. But it was written by a shaman from my lineage. He wrote a book, and it goes something along the lines of, here's the best example. You're walking into a forest. Now, a person with a limited mindset or just certain ideologies in their head might think, as they're walking in, like, oh God, forests are so creepy. Oh, why are they so scary? Like the ultimate thought there is forests are creepy and weird shit goes on. So guess what? As you're walking through the woods, even if you're not actively thinking that, but that's your mindset about it, then the universe is going to respond. And not because it's mean, but because that's what you're projecting out there. The forest is creepy and weird. Well, guess what? You're going to be constantly looking over your shoulder. You're going to be hearing sticks cracking in the distance and think, oh my God, someone's here to kill me. And you're going to have a terrible time in the forest. Now, conversely, if you go into the forest and you're like, wow, these trees are beautiful and old and have such magnetic energy. Nature is amazing. And you go through the forest, guess what? You're going to have an amazing time and feel uplifted and feel that, like, all the energy that's in there, that these plants and these trees and these animals, you might have like good encounters with animals, a deer crossing your path, a bird coming down, a butterfly landing on your shoulder, whatever. And this could be happening at the same exact time. It could be two people walking on the same path at the same time next to each other. But one person's having a hell of a time over here because they literally think they're in hell because they're in a forest. The same person at the same time on the same path is having a wonderful time. And that's, with those two people next to each other, that's the best example I can give of life. You could be walking next to somebody and you're having an amazing time, having amazing things happen to you, and the person next to you is going through the same thing, but because of their mindset and their ideologies, they're like, oh my God, you know what I mean? I think we all know people like that, where they're just constantly in fear of everything. Their mind goes to the worst point possible first. Those are the kinds of things we have to try and recognize about ourselves and change. Now, do you have to change as a person? No, I can't sit here and tell you have to do something. But if you want to have a better life, you want to be the best version of yourself, this is the work you have to do. This is what it means to reclaim your power, your mental power, your emotional power, your physical power, your spiritual power. It's all wrapped in one. And like I've said in other videos, the sooner we can recognize that we are an energetic spiritual being, the better everyone's life will be, the better the world will be, because we'll understand that we need to take care of ourselves, not just on a physical and emotional level, but also a spiritual and energetic one. And so that's why I do what I do, why I continue doing what I do, even though some people have a problem with it or don't believe in it. And I don't care. I hear stuff like that and I just think it just makes me sad, because it's like, oh, but I can help you or others like me, not just me, of course. Other people's with abilities like that. It's like, we're just here to help, so don't let your limited mindset stop you from coming to see me and doing a session, or even just getting a tarot card reading, getting some guidance, whatever it is. It can be scary, but the sooner we can face our inner demons, you have to face them. You have to turn around and look them in the eyeball and be like, I see you. I'm going to work on this. I'm going to not lose sight of you because you'll be gone soon. Right? And so I think too, well, no, I'm going to stop there because I'm going to get a whole other thing, but reclaiming power, that's what it's all about. Remembering your divinity, remembering you're a divine being, and that you can literally do anything you want in this lifetime. But we have to change our limited mindsets, our ideologies, our dogmas in order to do that, in order to be more accepting of ourselves, more accepting of others, and just go about life more peacefully in general. It sounds hard, but it's not impossible. It is hard sometimes. I'm not going to lie. The healing, the facing what you need to face within yourself, that can be difficult to look at and be like, wow, I've been not doing so good before. um, it's always worth it. It's always worth it. When after doing this for a while now and healing, I feel so much lighter. I feel so much more myself than I ever have, at least in this lifetime, probably in previous lifetimes too. It's like I've said in other videos, I've just been here for too long. So that feeling of being able to surrender and flow with life rather than like constantly having to fight and go this way and that way, worth it. Again, if you want to do a session, get a hold of me. If you literally just have questions or unsure of something that I've been talking about, get a hold of me. I'm here for questions, comments, concerns, whatever. We're all in this together. High School Musical style. We're all in this together. Okay, I'm gonna stop now. We're getting out of control now. I'm singing and I'm sorry. But the serious part of this is that you can do this and make it happen, but also find joy in life. Sing really terribly to a bunch of people. It'll be fine. It'll all be okay.